Is Chris. It is Tuesday, April the 23rd. Welcome. Thank you as always for coming. So I mentioned it's April 23rd. So something happened on April 23rd, 2020, 4 years ago that I want to draw your attention to because I think it's important as we discuss what's happening in this campaign. 4 years ago, Donald Trump was in the White House press briefing room as President of the United States talking about the coronavirus, which was ramping up and up and up and up. Here's what he said, quote, "So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just a very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked because of the testing. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or some other way, and I think you said you're going to test that too." Trump went on to add this, "I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? As you see, it gets in the lungs. It does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it would be interesting to check that." Now, Trump was speaking to a guy named Bill Bryan who worked for the Department of Homeland Security. He was the science and technology advisor, and they were trying to think of sort of novel ways, glasses still crooked, novel ways to address the coronavirus. But this was the President of the United States in the midst of a pandemic that had already killed thousands of people and would go on to kill, I think it's more than 1 million Americans by the time it was mostly all over. Suggesting that we either shine a very bright light inside the body or ingest a disinfectant of some sort to kill the coronavirus. Now, Donald Trump, breaking news, is not a doctor, nor is he a scientist, nor is he an epidemiologist, nor is he an infectious disease expert. But he was using his platform to suggest something that is at worst, at best, not good for you, and at worst, really bad for you. Injecting or drinking a disinfectant is not good for the body. I'm not a doctor, but I know that. And why do I bring this up? Well, it happened 4 years ago today, number one. So I think it's worth noting that was what happened that day. But also because so much of the conversation in this presidential race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is about, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, right? That is the question that Donald Trump in his campaign keeps asking, insisting that 4 years ago, everything was great. The economy was booming. People were safe. We didn't have any immigration problems. Inflation was low. Some of those things are true. The border was less of an issue 4 years ago than it is today. Inflation was lower 4 years ago than it is today. But I also think you have to remember the other things happening 4 years ago, which is we were in the midst of a pandemic. Now, that pandemic is not Donald Trump's fault. It was a once in 100 years event, we hope. It was totally out of the blue. That said, he said and did many things that I would argue made it worse. He had cut a lot of the pandemic prevention treatments, whether it was public policy officials or that sort of thing. He had gotten rid of a lot of that had been put in place by George W. Bush and Barack Obama. He was initially extremely dismissive of the threat that COVID-19 posed to this country. He said that we would have under 100 cases. He said it wouldn't come to America. He said everything would be fine by Easter, if you remember that. Easter 2020, obviously that wasn't even close to being right. Then there's the whole mask thing, right? So we can have a debate about masks, but it seems to me that the medical science suggests that masks help prevent the spread of infection. If you are infected, wearing a mask helps keep the infection from spreading. Trump would not wear a mask in public. He said he didn't think it was presidential. He sort of poo-pooed the science behind masks. So there's that whole thing. Then there's this, which I just mentioned, the talk about disinfectant and light being shined in the body and things that are not medically proven. Hydroxychloroquine as a treatment, ivermectin as a treatment, like all these words from the past. So I'm not suggesting that if Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or George W. Bush or anyone else had been president, that they would have just handled this pandemic and it would have been half as long and no problems. And no one would have died. Absolutely not. But I am suggesting that things Donald Trump did 4 years ago helped to make things worse. And I think when we're having that 4 years ago, are you better off than you were 4 years ago conversation and debate, which we're going to have between now and in November, you have to factor in things like COVID-19. How did Donald Trump as president react? Did he make things better, worse, or about the same? I would argue he made things worse in both his rhetoric and the decisions he made surrounding COVID-19. So an anniversary of, I would say, one of the lower points of the Trump presidency, the disinfectant and shining a light moment 4 years ago today. So remember, when you're asked, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? It's a complex conversation and thought process. All right, that's all I got. Have a great rest of your day. Subscribe, like this video, tell 5 friends. That's all I ask. Take care. See you tomorrow.